So in order to understand how to pass shit tests, you first have to understand what they are, where they come from, and why they exist. And in order to do that, we have to understand a philosophy behind the dynamic of how interactions work between men and women. I don't think it's controversial to say that women are trying their best to get their hands on the baddest motherfucker they can find. But being the baddest motherfucker isn't just a physical thing. In fact, it has more to do with your confidence and competence as a man. And the more competent and confident you are to women, the higher you are in desirability to them. The thing though is, women are biologically incentivized to observe you and everything you do. They're constantly screening, vetting, and looking to see if you're really the guy that you've presented yourself to be. And to be completely honest, they're hoping to God that you really are that man so that their search can be over. So the question becomes, since we know that they're constantly observing us and looking for signs of confidence and competence, what exactly does confidence and competence look like to women? And how do they know when they've seen it? Well, that brings us to a new word, and the French call it résistance. Yes, resistance and how you handle yourself within it and how you power through the adversity of that will tell women everything they need to know about your confidence and competence levels. And on an evolutionary and biological level, that makes perfect sense. In every single realm of endeavor, it is through adversity that we find out who people really are. So women are constantly observing you to see how you handle yourself in the midst of adversity. Do you know how to handle yourself? Do you know what to do? Do you have the experience? Do you throw your hands up in the air and give up? Do you run away? Do you crawl into the fetal position and cry? Or do you stand firm and handle the adversity with charm, playfulness, humor, and experience? You know, like a man. Now I can already hear some people saying, I don't need to prove myself to a girl. Blah, blah, blah. And to you I say, shut your mouth. You sound childish. The basic fundamental of this game we're playing is an exchange of values. So having and representing value is the bare minimum you need to even play this game to begin with. And besides, you should be doing a good job at vetting and observing her. But instead of vetting her for confidence and competence, you're going to be vetting her for youthfulness and compliance. I already have another video about that on my YouTube. Go check that out. Anyway, back to the main topic. Women want to see what you're made of, and they use resistance to do just that. But here's the thing most people don't seem to understand about how interactions between men and women work. That resistance doesn't always come from the woman herself, contrary to popular belief. I might be incorrect in saying this because I just haven't done enough research into it yet. But from everything I've come to know in the game and from my own personal experience, I have a strong reason to believe that women giving men shit tests, especially the verbal ones, are a fairly new occurrence in the existence of humanity. From everything I've come to know in evolutionary psychology, I truly don't believe that cave women had any real need to shit test cavemen. Hear me out. Back in caveman days, with the complete lack of civilization, society, or technology, as humans we needed to earn our survival on a daily basis a lot harder than we do now. The environment was harsh and not entirely conducive for our existence. And as a species, we faced a lot of pushback and resistance on a daily basis. So it's safe to say that even back then it was evolutionarily redundant for cave women to shit test cavemen. Because daily life already offered all the resistance that she needed to see and observe to know if he was confident and competent. And I've personally come to believe that because we as human beings don't live in quite as harsh an environment anymore, women have evolved to become the adversity that they need to see us go through. I mean, hell, if you think about it, we're at the point now where we have technology-based resistance and adversity. And don't even lie, we all know what I'm talking about. If you consider yourself advanced or intermediate in the game, let me ask you something. Does it feel like whenever you have to approach a girl that's by herself, things just don't go quite well most of the time? She's a lot more dismissive, a lot more rude, uptight, or just straight up scared of you? But then when you go through some kind of environment or situation-based resistance, like the mother hen trying to cock block, we've all been there, haven't we? Or the gay best friend hounding you with questions, or maybe just approaching her and her group of friends at the same time. Everything just goes smoother afterwards with like little to no resistance. Almost as if the brunt of the resistance and adversity you had to face was in the front end, and because you passed through that with flying colors, everything's now easy. You struggled to the top of the hill, but now you roll down the other side of it with zero to no resistance. That is not an accident. Like I said before, on a biological and evolutionary level, it would be completely redundant to have her put you through some more shit tests after she's already observed you masterfully handled the situation with the mother hen. She's seen what she needs to see. Her biology is satisfied. You already passed. So basically, that's my way of saying women are only biologically incentivized to give you shit tests when you meet them in environments where there's little to no resistance. AKA environments where the barrier to entry is very low and the access to her directly is very high. I know that was a long about way to go about explaining it, but that's very important to understand. Keep that in mind. And it's a great segue into my second most important point, which is resistance is inevitable. Depending on the girl's initial attraction for you, the resistance you face and she'll meet you with may be similar to that of a roadblock, or traffic lights, or even a tiny little speed bump. But resistance is inevitable. You would be an idiot to try to wish that away. And it'll be your job as a man to skillfully handle that in front of her. Whether that resistance or adversity may be something relating to the situation and environment you're in with her, or her herself. Alright, next lesson is going to be about the different types of shit tests and how to handle them. Stay tuned. In general, there's only 3 types of resistance that'll come directly from women during an interaction. And they're all designed to test different things about you. The first is a congruence test. This is a test of your masculine identity. The basic principle to understanding and passing this particular kind of shit test is fairly simple. Agreeable women are sexy. Agreeable men are not. There's almost nothing that is more unattractive than a man that is willing to bend and shake who he is fundamentally to please his woman. Because if he'll bend and change for his woman, he'll bend and change for the world. And men who cannot stand firm on their identity are constantly chewed up and spit out by the world. You see it all the time. There's only 2 things you need to pass this shit test consistently. And the first is kind of obvious, which is a strong identity and unshakable belief in yourself. By the way, I have an entire course on that. The more soaked you are in your identity, the harder it will be to shake you out of it. Whenever you present yourself in a certain light to the world, it is the world's job to test to see if that's who you really are. And congruence tests are designed to test that identity, which gives you a massive incentive to not lie about who you really are. Because a test of identity, a congruence test, comes for everybody, especially from women. And by nature, these congruence tests that the women are going to fire your way, are specifically designed to target what the woman perceives in that moment to be your insecurities. So don't be surprised if you're a bald guy and you have a lot of women mention that because they're trying to see if it shakes you. Or if you're a short guy and they try to dismiss you because of your height. Or maybe they even tease you about something abstract to see if you take it personally. The thing is, if you had a strong identity, you would never take any of it personally. Let's go through a few examples. Let's say you're 5'5" as a guy, and you walk up to a girl and she says, "I'm sorry, you're too short for me." With no strong identity of your own, you're probably going to take that personal, and completely fail at giving her the opportunity to see how grounded you are in who you are. If you actually have gotten to the place where being vertically challenged, as they say, really doesn't bother you, then your natural response to that statement will be something like, "Yeah, babe, I'm 5'5". I'm too short for everyone. But I'm also too sexy for everyone, so it evens out." Or, "Yeah, you're going to be the one reaching the top shelf for me in this relationship. I can't be bothered. My stool climbing days are over." Or, "No, you're good. I like tall women. It's no problem for me." Or even better, "You're right at my cutoff mark. Any taller and we'd look too goofy together." Now, those last 2 might have seemed completely out of place, especially from like a grammar standpoint. But let me explain why they're genius. She tells you you're too short, and you answer back with a very calm, confident, "Nah, you're fine. You're not too tall for me." It's a subconscious way of showing her that you're so busy trying to vet her to be worried about your own identity and the way you look to her, which is an extremely massive show of confidence. It's like you're so grounded in your identity, it didn't even cross your mind that she was trying to offend you. Okay, real quick, here's one I used the other day. "I'm sorry, I don't date black guys." Yeah, me neither. The second kind of resistance that comes from women is a compliance test. And these are my favorite. Remember the one girl we were talking about not too long ago, the one that wanted the hot dogs? What she fired, whether she realized it or not, was a compliance test. And just like the congruence test, the principle behind them are very similar. Agreeable women are sexy, agreeable men are not. Except there's a slight difference to this one. This one has a lot less to do with your identity as a man, and a lot more to do with the way you structure the dynamic of the relationship you're building with this woman. Let me explain. I've said this before, I'll say it again. When it comes down to it, a relationship is just an exchange of values. And just like every other value exchange, there's hidden contracts, conditions, terms, all that stuff. So in essence, what a compliance test is, if used correctly, is a tiny portion of a negotiation process going on between you and the woman. And every woman in an interaction with a man has one primary goal and one secondary goal. The primary goal is to get as much as she can from the dynamic and the inner workings of the relationship. And the secondary goal is to make sure that she's not having to give up too much in exchange for it. So basically, she's trying to play attack and defense at the same time. But women are primarily opportunistic and greedy creatures, which is why they're a lot more attack-oriented. If you allow them to have their way, they will structure the entirety of the relationship and the dynamics of it to benefit them and benefit them only. And fuck you over in the process with no remorse. To be completely honest, it's one of those things I actually truly admire about women. They are shameless and relentless about what they want. And they may not always come up with the best plan or strategy or execution for getting what they want, but at least they have their eyes on the prize. I can respect that. A compliance test is a way for a woman to get from you without giving anything back to you in return. If you're in the friend zone, that's exactly how you got there. There was a point where she gave you a compliance test and you failed. But here's the kicker though. You didn't fail simply because you complied. That's not the issue here. Because don't forget what I said in the beginning. Mutual compliance between both parties is how relationships are built. When that exchange of values, compliance, ceases to exist between both parties, then that relationship is effectively over. So simply not complying to women when they fire a compliance test at you is not how you pass a compliance test. That is a massive misconception people have. The way you actually pass a compliance test is to juxtapose your compliance test on top of hers. Let's go back to the example of old girl with the hot dog. I'm paraphrasing now, but I think bro who walked up to her and said, "I find you attractive, let me get your Instagram." That was his opener, but that also counts as a compliance test. It takes compliance for a woman to give you her contact information. She fires her own compliance test on top of that and says, "Okay, cool, if you want my Insta, get me a hot dog from the hot dog lady on the stand over there." And what did I say he should have done in the video? He should have fired another compliance test on top of that to juxtapose on top of hers. Okay, hold on. Let me use a simpler example. You find yourself at a coffee shop and you start talking to a girl you find attractive. You're talking back and forth. Everything's going well, it looks like. So at this point, you can be said to have mutual compliance between each other. But in pure female nature, she wants to up the ante. So at some point, she looks at you and she says, "I want to keep talking to you, but I'm almost out of coffee." Because, unless they're completely socially uncalibrated, women won't just come out and be like, "Buy me more coffee." But basically, that's her way of saying, "Get me more coffee." "I got what I'm drinking right now from that one blonde behind the counter over there. She's super nice." I did that a little too well. Pause. But anyway, now you're in this situation. She just asked you to get her more coffee, aka pay for a cup of coffee for her. But here's the thing though. Remember what I said about agreeable men? If you comply to her request, you're weak. And now she has no respect for you. No respect equals no attraction. So you can't just simply go and get the coffee. At the same time though, you can't just not go and get the coffee. Because an unwillingness to comply is the destruction of the relationship. Or more specifically, this little interaction you've had so far. So what do? You ask for your own little compliance in exchange. That way it's not just you giving her shit because she asked or for no reason. It's a mutual exchange of compliance and values so that she can feel like she had to put in something to get something in return. Remember this for the rest of your life. Women, and people in general, have to give something in return for anything they get to appreciate it. Time, effort, energy, personality, whatever it may be. No matter how small the price you're asking them to pay. There must always be a price to pay for your compliance. Let them know, on a playful and charming level, that there is some kind of terms and conditions they have to meet in order for you to comply to them. So back to sexy coffee, bitch. What you should say in this example is, "Oh, was that the counter over there? Oh, okay, yeah, she seems nice. All right, I'll get you a coffee. But I only buy coffees for smart girls. Who's the president of Morocco?" Or, "I'll get you a coffee, but I don't really know you like that. At least tell me something interesting about you." Or, "You drink coffee? What the hell? You caffeine addict. I'm getting you a tea instead." Or, "Sure, I'll get you a coffee, but you have to promise not to fall in love with me, okay?" Or, "Okay, let me know what kind of coffee you drink, and be very careful what you say next, because depending on what you say, it might be a deal breaker." And then no matter what she says, you just go, "It was nice to meet you." And then playfully pretend like you're standing up from the table and then come back and be like, "I'm just kidding." And the best part about that line is that you can exaggerate it however you want. You're supposed to like your men strong and black, not coffee. What the fuck's wrong with you? The huge key, though, is to remember to be playful throughout the whole thing. And to see compliance tests not as some kind of a trap between a rock and a hard place, but as an opportunity to set the dynamic of the relationship. You give to me first, then I give to you. The last kind of resistance you'll get from a woman in an interaction with her is an objection. And objections, by nature, are very unique because of what they test for. Objections, in their purest form, are designed to test for your problem solving and anticipatory skills, something I like to call your play-making ability. You see, by design, all relationships are riddled with problems. Problems that, as a man, it is your responsibility to solve. And in order for a woman to be in any kind of relationship with you, she wants to know that you have the ability to solve these problems. So objections are like roadblocks that are designed to throw you off the straight line to success, just to see how you handle yourself and see if you have the ability to get back on the path. Now, as much as I say all that, the truth is women don't just come up with those objections themselves. Women aren't going out of their way to create these objections and then present them to you. Let's go back to this roadblock analogy, right? Women are not the roadblock. Neither did they go out of their way to place the roadblock there. Women are more like the GPS system that lets you know ahead of time that the roadblock is coming. And it'll be completely up to you to handle that roadblock yourself. When women bring up objections, they're not doing it to deter you per se. But they're not on your side either. They simply play the role of spectator, looking to see if you can actually handle yourself. The other thing to note about objections is that they only ever show up between checkpoints during an interaction. Another way to say it is that you're only going to run into an objection when you're trying to move the interaction from one stage to the other. Major stages like asking for her contact information, asking her to come out to see you on a date, asking her to go from one location to the other, stuff like that. This is where objections reside. And women are incentivized to fire those objections to make sure you meet all the terms and conditions of the previous stage before you go on to the next one. Because of all this, objections happen to be the most popular kinds of resistance men face today. Do any of these sound familiar to you? Sorry, I don't give my number out to strangers. Sorry, I have a boyfriend. Thanks for the offer, but I don't drink. Yeah, those are all objections. Now, I understand this is the part where I'm supposed to give you a bunch of lines to help you with most of these popular objections. But hold on, objections are a little trickier than the first two. There's a reason I left it for last. Like I said before, an objection will pop up between stages of an interaction, and they're designed to test your problem-solving abilities. Which means, in order to get good at getting past objections, you first have to be good at solving problems. And what's step one of solving problems? If you're familiar with my work, then you know exactly what I'm about to say, so you can say it with me. Step one of solving problems is, yes, actually identifying the problem. Because unbeknownst to people, even in my industry, there's actually two kinds of objections. And misdiagnosing which one and which kind of objection you're dealing with will fuck you over in the way of actually solving the objection. And even worse, women, unbeknownst to them, fire these two kinds of objections that are camouflaged to look like each other. So the whole time you think you're dealing with one kind, you're actually dealing with the other. The first kind of objection you'll deal with are the external-based objections. This is usually based off of the environment you're in and the logistics you have at your disposal. A linear 1 and zeros type thinking will be useful to you here, with of course some emphasis on thinking outside the box. It's A plus B equals C type shit. If you're a gamer or mathematician or logician of any kind, you're going to excel here. Because while not everything is within your control, you do have enough of an influence over the situation to make a significant impact. And have her watch you solve the problem from A to Z. Here, let me give you an example. You run into this pretty little thing at the club and you hit it off immediately. Chemistry's on 10, tension's rising, things are going well. So you figure it's time to isolate your target, right? So you lean in and say, hey, it's getting kind of rowdy in here, I can barely hear you. Before I came in here, I noticed there was a pizza joint next door. Let's go get some pizza, my treat. And then she says, I'd love to, but I can't. I'm here with my friends. So you being a logical thinker, you go, okay, this girl just doesn't want to get separated from her friends. Okay, I have a few options. Option 1, I can bring her with her friends. That kind of defeats the point of isolating my target. Or option 2, I can just promise to bring her right back to her friends. So yeah, that kind of works. So you go with option 2. Oh, was that? You're here with your friends? That's fine. We'll just grab one slice and then we'll be right back, okay? I promise. Or you can use a time constraint instead. We'll be there for like 5 minutes. 5 minutes at the most, and then we'll be right back. Scout's honor. Now, 5 times, maybe even 6 times out of 10, she'll go, okay, sure, I'd love to. But then here's what'll happen the other 4 times out of 10. I don't know. We've only been talking for a little bit. Let's talk a little more. Or she might even say, I'm not really hungry. Maybe later. And just like that, you've run into the second kind of objection. The internal-based objections. This kind of objection has almost nothing to do with the actual logistics at the moment. It's an objection that is based solely on her emotions. Maybe she doesn't feel too comfortable or too certain or too assured in the next move with you. And for the most part, these aren't the hardest objections to run into. but they're by far the most frustrating, and they are always well timed. The most popular kind of internal based objection is the last minute resistance. For those of you that don't know what that is, basically to keep it PG, that's when things get to the point of no return. And then she tries to return. And again, they're always well timed. Wait, I think we're going too fast. Hold on, I think I need to know you better. Sometimes it's something completely out of nowhere. Wait, you never told me what your favorite color was. Basically, by design, you can't ones and zeros your way out of this one. Your linear, logical thinking will do nothing but frustrate you here. So the key to passing these objections is making her feel heard and understood. Basically, some fairly high levels of social calibration. Let's go back to this chick here. Remember when I said both internal and external based objections look the same sometimes? This is a perfect example of what I meant. She said, and I quote, "Sorry, I can't. I came here with my friends." By the very wording of that, that could have been either one of those type of objections. She could be saying, "Sorry, my friends are my ride. I can't physically leave them because logistics." But she could have also been saying, "Sorry, I don't trust you quite yet, and I need my friends to know where I'm at all times." You see now why it's important to figure out which one you're dealing with? So the first step of dealing with an objection is going to be identifying what kind of objection you're dealing with first. And the way to do that is simple. You ask further questions. Oh, you're here with your friends. Okay, are they a ride or... She'll either say, "Yeah, they're my ride. I can't allow myself to be separated from them too far, they'll leave me." Or, "No, we came in different cars, but I'm not really hungry." Now you know what kind of objection you're dealing with. If it's external, just deal with it logically. Go ahead and ones and zeros your way out of that shit. Obviously, depending on the situation, the more resources you have at your disposal, the better. It's way better to say, "I have my car parked outside," than "I can get us an Uber," just as an example. But if you don't have any resources or very little to lean on, there's always resourcefulness, so make sure you use that. Now, if it's an internal based objection, this is what you do. You fire a shit test at her to instigate. Wow, I have never met anyone that's scared of pizza. Come on now, put your big girl pants on. It's just pizza, it won't kill you. And I'll bring you right back, lickety split, you heard? It might sound counterintuitive, but it's actually pretty genius. Let me tell you why. The beginner level guys listening to me right now would probably think, well, if she's not comfortable with you, just make her comfortable first. And while that sounds noble, it doesn't actually work like that. Because of the way this game is structured, women need to trust your leadership. If you accommodate defiance of any kind, you destroy your own ability to lead. And if you destroy your ability to lead, then by definition, you destroy the relationship. If you're intermediate, then you probably think to yourself, okay, I'm just going to meet her halfway. I don't need to move her out of the club. I just need to move her to another area of the club just to move things along. And I thought like that for years. Another example would be when you ask a girl for her phone number and she goes, "I don't give my phone number to strangers, but you can take my Instagram." It sounds like you're making progress, but you're not. So what you need to do is get her to increase her trust in you. And in my experience, which I know will sound counterintuitive, but the best way to go about getting a woman to trust your leadership is to playfully and charmingly tease her about it. As long as you're being playful about it, you can instigate her into compliance. All you have to do is say, "Ugh, I thought you were super cool before you said that." Or, "Boo, boo, pizza, pizza." And then after doing that, you can chill and not push past that particular checkpoint. Because again, she doesn't quite trust you yet. So you have to take a few steps back on the compliance ladder and reapproach that checkpoint again. The fact that you got that internal based objection is the proof that you did something incorrectly previously within that same stage. So you need to take a few steps back and rekindle stuff like the attraction levels, the comfort levels, etc. So ultimately, just like I mentioned before with the beginner or the intermediate, you are being accommodating. Except this time, you're doing it from a place of power, which is significantly different. Here, let me give you another example. You finally meet up with this fine-ass chick you've been talking to over the phone for a while. Sparks are flying everywhere, the chemistry is on point, the sexual tension is just high. So naturally, after the date, being the gentleman you are, you offer to drive her to her place. In front of the doors to her apartment building, and everything's going well. You're making out a little bit, maybe even getting a little handsy, whispering all those dirty things into each other's ears. Ooh. But then all of a sudden, she pulls back and she says, "Okay, you can come up to my apartment, but we're not having sex tonight." That is a very common objection women give, by the way. And it's a great one to get because it lets you know that they're actually thinking about sex. Like I said before, objections usually come up when you're going from one point of the interaction to the other. They act like the gatekeepers between checkpoints. So in a way, the fact that you're getting an objection is the indicator that you're making progress within the interaction. Anyway, back to this moment. She just told you can come upstairs, but you're not having sex tonight. What did I say step number 1 was? Identify the kind of objection you're dealing with. Which is why you say, oh, word? Why though? And then she might say, we can't, it's only our first date. Or, we can't, my roommate's probably back from work by now. The first was internal based, and the second one was external. If you get the roommate excuse, again, just ones and zeros your way through it. Your linear thinking will be enough to solve this problem. All she's really saying is that her place is not a viable sex location. Which, by the way, means she wants to have sex with you. So all you have to do is find a new sex location. No big deal. Or if you can wing it, make her place a more viable sex location by changing the frame around it. If for whatever reason you can't bring her back to your place or even your car, then you can say to her, oh, your roommate's up there? We better be quiet then. Or, you don't even know if she's back from work yet. What if she's working overtime? She seems like a hard worker. Text her and find out. Who knows, we might have like a good 30 minutes together before she gets back. And that should be more than enough. Now, as for the first one, the internal-based objection, she's telling you that the reason sex can't happen is because of something that she feels. And what's step 1 with that? Shit test her. You know, with how long we spent time with each other, it technically feels like 3 dates. Or, oh, we definitely can't have sex right now. I am on my period. It is a bloody mess down there. Or, oh man, you didn't tell me you were a Catholic. Get off me. And then after that, just go back to the comfort building stage. You're welcome. The truth is, while it's good to know how to handle all kinds of shit tests, whether they be congruence tests, compliance tests, or objections, in my personal experience, the best way to handle all forms of shit tests is to fire your shit tests and fire them first. It shows foresight and risk-taking ability, and it's by far the best way to hold the frame of the entire interaction. It gives you all the control because it puts you on the front foot and her on the back foot. You effectively flip the script and get her chasing you and your validation. But be warned, it's not an easy position to maintain. Plus, because of the very nature of that dynamic, women are inherently biologically incentivized to give you even harder shit tests to try to flip the script back in their favor. So once you begin to establish yourself as a source of validation for her, and get her to do all the qualifying to you, you better make sure you hold on to that frame for dear life. Because from that point on, if you allow her to take control of the frame again, the consequences can be dire. It becomes very difficult to get the frame back, and honestly, you're on a one-way ticket to the friend zone, so be warned. Another major advantage to flipping the script on her and shit-testing her first is that it's by far the best way, in my personal opinion, of preemptively dealing with objections before they come up. I'll give you an example real quick. You've been on a wonderful date, sparks are flying, the chemistry is up there, and now you're in front of the door to her apartment building. And from what I told you before about how objections come up between stages of an interaction, you won't be wrong at all to predict that there's a major objection coming up right now. Because you're going from one stage, being at the end of the date, or possible end of the date, to another stage, which is going up to her house. So before she gets the chance to say, you can come up, but we're not having sex, you can preemptively go, I've had a lot of fun spending time with you. You're a great, great girl to kick it with. And I know we're about to go up to your place, but before we do, I got to tell you real quick, though, I don't really get down like that, okay? I'm not a sex on the first date type of person. And then she'll say something like, oh, okay, that's fine. Or she might even say, oh, that's my line. Or, I wasn't even thinking about that anyway. Or the hotter girls have large egos, so they get offended when you preemptively push them away like that. If you're familiar with sales, then handling objections preemptively is something you're familiar with. And the actual objections themselves are honestly quite repetitive. So the more experience you gather in this game, the more familiar you will be with those objections. And like I said before, they'll show up at the checkpoints, so there'll be checkpoint-related objections. Checkpoints that block you off from the next stage of the interaction. So for instance, prepare for objections around when you want to get her phone number, or when you want to go out on a date with her, or when you want to move locations with her, or when you want to go to her place or bring her to yours, or even when you're getting closer to the point of intimacy. Prepare for these objections. After a time, you'll have a script for every single one of them. I would give you the scripts, but honestly, I'd be taking away your ability to solve these problems. And you need to be a good problem solver to be good at shit tests. Alright, that's the full guide. Hope you actually got something from this. Now go practice.